It started as an ordinary day in London, with the government going about its business, confident in the nation's security measures. MI7, Britain's top intelligence agency, was operating as usual, monitoring global threats, overseeing undercover operations, and ensuring that the nation's secrets remained protected from foreign adversaries. Everything seemed under control. Then the unthinkable happened. A massive cyber attack crippled the government's intelligence network, penetrating MI7's highly classified systems in a matter of minutes. Every field agent's identity, names, locations, mission files, all were exposed. The most sensitive data, once guarded behind layers of encryption, now lay in the hands of an unknown enemy. Inside MI7 headquarters, alarms blared. Analysts scrambled at their computers, typing furiously as they attempted to trace the source of the breach. The cyber defenses, once believed to be impenetrable, were being dismantled like they were nothing. The director of MI7, a seasoned intelligence officer known for his calm demeanor, felt his blood run cold as he watched the live data feed disappear from the main screen. The breach wasn't just a minor security failure, it was a catastrophe. MI7's entire spy network had been compromised in real time. "Shut it down! Cut the main servers!" the director barked, his voice tense with urgency. But it was too late. The hacker had already left a signature behind, a taunting message flashing in bold red letters across the agency's primary interface. "Your secrets belong to us now." As the realization sank in, the room fell into an eerie silence. The entire intelligence network of the British government had been rendered useless. Every undercover agent was now in grave danger. The Prime Minister was informed within minutes. The weight of the situation was immense. If MI7's agents had been exposed, it meant that Britain's enemies now had an advantage like never before. No one could be trusted. Even their own intelligence officers were at risk of being turned or eliminated. Sitting in her office, the Prime Minister leaned back in her chair, her mind racing through the possible solutions. Britain had always prided itself on being ahead in intelligence, but this attack had left them blind. Their enemies knew everything, and they knew nothing in return. She needed a response, and fast. MI7 convened an emergency meeting. The top officials, cybersecurity experts, and intelligence directors sat around a grand oak conference table, debating how to proceed. The room was filled with an air of desperation. "We have no agents left in the field. They're all compromised," one official said gravely. "Then we bring in someone off the grid," the director of MI7 responded. A silence followed. There were only a few former agents who had fallen off the radar, ones who had either retired or been dismissed. But there was one name that stood out, a name that many in the room hesitated to say aloud. But the director of MI7 said it anyway. Johnny English. The room collectively groaned. Some officials shook their heads in disbelief. Others tried to object immediately. "You can't be serious. He's a disaster, a liability, a walking catastrophe. He's our only option." The Prime Minister, who had been silent, raised an eyebrow. "Isn't he a schoolteacher now?" Indeed, Johnny English had long since retired from MI7. He had traded espionage for education, now working as a geography teacher at a quiet British prep school. His days of high-speed chases, dangerous shootouts, and extravagant blunders were far behind him. But if MI7 had learned anything that day, it was that modern technology had failed them. Their best and brightest had been undone by a single cyber attack. And while Johnny English may not have been a conventional choice, there was one undeniable fact. His name was not in the leaked files, because MI7 had long erased him from their active records. The decision was made. A black MI7 vehicle was dispatched immediately to find Johnny English. Meanwhile, in a prestigious private school outside London, Johnny English stood at the front of a classroom, teaching his students a practical lesson on survival tactics. The classroom looked more like a military boot camp than a place of education. Maps lined the walls, compasses and old navigation tools sat on the desks, and the students, young boys dressed in crisp uniforms, listened with wide eyes as their teacher demonstrated the finer points of self-defense using a textbook as a weapon. "Now, class, if you ever find yourself in a hostage situation," Johnny declared, holding up a hardcover book, "this is not just for reading. It's a shield, a distraction, and if used correctly, a blunt force weapon." One of the students, clearly fascinated, raised his hand. "Sir, isn't this just a geography class?" "Exactly. And what is geography, if not the study of one's surroundings? And what is survival, if not using those surroundings wisely?" Johnny grinned. "Now, let's say a highly trained assassin comes at you. What do you do?" Before the boy could answer, the classroom door swung open abruptly. A grim-faced My-7 agent entered. The entire class turned toward him. Johnny instantly recognized the look. He had seen it before, many times in his career. "Trouble." The My-7 agent stepped forward, holding out a sealed file. "Johnny English, you've been reactivated." A wide grin spread across Johnny's face. He had waited for this moment. Despite the years that had passed, despite the teaching career, despite his seemingly quiet life, deep down he had never stopped being a spy. His students looked at him in awe as he straightened his blazer, adjusted his tie, and grabbed the file with purpose. "Class dismissed, gentlemen. There's a country to save." As he walked out the door, Miss Evans' agent gave him a skeptical glance. "Sir, do you still remember how to use standard-issue weapons?" Johnny smirked. "Weapons? My dear boy, I am the weapon." And just like that, Johnny English was back. Johnny English strode confidently out of the classroom, feeling the familiar thrill of stepping back into action. He had spent years away from the world of espionage, and while he had enjoyed molding young minds with his unconventional teaching methods, deep down, he had always missed the adventure. As he followed the My-7 agent to the waiting black sedan, a crowd of students watched from the classroom window, whispering excitedly about their teacher's mysterious past. For them, Johnny had always been an eccentric, if not slightly unorthodox, geography instructor. But this was something else entirely. The agent opened the car door. Johnny paused, looking at the sleek vehicle, then at the school building behind him. "Do I have time to pack?" he asked. "No, sir. The situation is urgent." Johnny nodded, stepping into the car with a sense of purpose. The door shut, and the vehicle pulled away, leaving behind his once ordinary life as a teacher. As they sped through the streets of London, Johnny glanced at the agent beside him. He was young, sharp-suited, and had the distinct air of someone who had read too many intelligence manuals but had yet to experience the field. "So, what do they call you?" Johnny asked. The agent barely flicked his gaze toward him. "Agent Thompson, sir." Johnny smirked. "Thompson. Sounds reliable. Tell me, Thompson, have you ever taken down an enemy combatant using only a piece of cutlery?" The younger agent hesitated. "No, sir." Johnny nodded knowingly. "Ah, you'll learn. I once neutralized a highly trained operative with nothing but a dessert spoon, but that's a story for another time." The agent remained silent, clearly unsure of whether Johnny was being serious. As the car navigated through the busy streets, Johnny's mind raced. He had been out of the game for years, and yet here he was, summoned once again to protect his country. The last time My-7 had called him back, he had single-handedly thwarted an international conspiracy, though not without causing significant collateral damage. Whatever was happening now, it had to be serious. The car approached My-7's headquarters, an imposing glass and steel structure hidden among London's financial district. It was a building that had changed since his time. The last time Johnny had seen it, My7 had operated from an older, more traditional facility, filled with leather chairs and mahogany desks. Now, the agency had fully embraced technology, with fingerprint scanners, facial recognition, and an unsettling number of security drones patrolling the perimeter. Johnny stepped out of the car and took a deep breath. New look. I liked the old place better. Had character. Smelled of victory? Agent Thompson ignored the comment and led him inside. As they entered the sleek corridors of Miss 7, Johnny took in the cold, high-tech atmosphere. Gone were the days of paper files and old-fashioned spy gadgets. Now, everything was digital, automated, and monitored. He had always been wary of technology, and this only reinforced his belief that too much reliance on computers was dangerous. Inside the main operations room, Miss 7 personnel worked frantically at their stations, screens filled with scrolling data and satellite images. The director of Miss 7, a no-nonsense woman with steel-gray hair and piercing eyes, stood at the head of the room, arms crossed. She turned as Johnny entered. Her expression remained unreadable. Ah, English. Still alive, I see. Johnny grinned. Not for lack of trying. She didn't smile. We have a crisis, and unfortunately, we have no choice but to involve you. Johnny placed a hand on his chest in mock flattery. Such a warm welcome. Really, it's touching. The director ignored him and gestured toward a massive screen that dominated the room. The screen displayed lines of code, disrupted networks, and a world map showing compromised locations. 2 days ago, Miss Evans' entire intelligence network was breached. Every active agent's identity has been compromised. Johnny raised an eyebrow. Except for me. The director exhaled, clearly hating to admit it. Yes, you were. Not in our active system. Ah, so losing track of me has finally paid off. Wonderful. A cyber intelligence officer, a bespectacled young woman, cut in. The attack was sophisticated. Whoever did this bypassed every firewall and encryption protocol we had. No known hacking group has ever pulled off something like this. Johnny stroked his chin, pretending to ponder deeply. Tell me, have we tried unplugging it and plugging it back in? The room fell into silence. The director pinched the bridge of her nose. English, this is serious. The Prime Minister herself ordered your involvement. Johnny's smirk faded slightly. If the Prime Minister had directly intervened, that meant the situation was even worse than he thought. The director continued. We have reason to believe that this attack was orchestrated by Jason Volta. At the mention of the name, Johnny's expression darkened. Jason Volta, Daddy. The billionaire tech mogul daughter. He had heard of Volta, a charismatic, dangerously intelligent businessman who had positioned himself as a global innovator. He owned some of the most powerful digital infrastructure on the planet, controlling cybersecurity firms, data centers, and even entire internet service providers. If he was behind this, it wasn't just about hacking, it was about control. Johnny folded his arms. So, what do we do? March up to his headquarters and ask him nicely to return our secrets? The director didn't answer. Instead, she clicked a button, and the screen changed to an image of Volta's private estate, a fortress-like compound built on the French Riviera, surrounded by high-tech security. We need proof that Volta is responsible. We need someone to infiltrate his inner circle. Someone who isn't compromised. Johnny immediately realized what was coming. He pointed at himself. You're thinking of sending me, aren't you? The director gave a slow, deliberate nod. You leave tonight? Johnny sighed dramatically, adjusting his tie. Well then, time to dust off my old tricks. Agent Thompson handed him a dossier. Everything you need is in here. Read it carefully. Johnny took the file, flipped through a few pages, then promptly tossed it over his shoulder. "I'll improvise." As the papers scattered across the floor, the director massaged her temples in frustration. Johnny English was back in action. And Miss Seven could only hope the world survived him. Johnny English stood in Miss Seven's sleek operations center, rolling his shoulders and adjusting his tie, as if he were preparing for a ballroom dance, rather than an international espionage mission. The tension in the room was palpable. Every intelligence officer, analyst, and cybersecurity expert present knew that the fate of Britain's security now rested in the hands of a former agent with a history of causing as many problems as he solved. The director of Miss Seven, standing with her arms crossed, exhaled sharply. "Let's get one thing straight, English. This isn't one of your usual bumbling assignments. If you fail, Volta will consolidate his power, and we will lose the ability to recover our agents. This is a precision operation." Johnny gave her his most confident smirk. "Precision is my middle name." The director sighed. "No, it isn't. And that's exactly what worries me." Agent Thompson, who had been standing stiffly beside Johnny since their arrival, cleared his throat and handed Johnny a tablet. On the screen, detailed schematics of Jason Volta's estate lit up. Blueprints, security layouts, and surveillance points all neatly displayed. "Volta's estate is impenetrable to standard approaches," Thompson explained. "The perimeter is guarded by a state-of-the-art biometric system, and drones patrol the airspace. No one gets in without being invited." Johnny leaned in, examining the screen, then looked up with a knowing smile. "Then I suppose we'll just have to get invited." The director raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" Johnny casually tossed the tablet onto a desk. "Leave that to me. First I'll need a tuxedo, a fast car, and a distraction." Before anyone could protest, a familiar voice piped up. "And I suppose you'll be needing a few toys as well." Johnny turned, his face lighting up. Standing at the entrance to the room was none other than Bao, his ever-loyal and endlessly patient former sidekick. Bao strode forward, carrying a sleek black case. Though years had passed since they last worked together, he still had the same unwavering enthusiasm. "Sir, it's good to see you again. I was beginning to think you'd actually settled into that teaching job for good." Johnny scoffed. "Teaching was fun, but you can only make kids do so many obstacle courses before the headmaster complains. Anyway, what have you got for me?" Bao placed the case on a metal table, flicked it open, and revealed an array of gadgets that only my Seven's most eccentric minds could have designed. "We've kept things simple this time, sir," Bao explained. He picked up a fountain pen and clicked the top. A small dart shot out, embedding itself in a corkboard across the room. "Sedative pen. Knocks out a target instantly. Just don't mistake it for an actual pen, or you might put yourself to sleep mid-signature." Johnny picked it up, examining it with admiration. "Elegant, deadly, and perfect for signing autographs." Bao then produced a pair of glasses. "These are smart lenses with facial recognition. They'll scan any person you look at and cross-reference them with my Seven's database. They also allow real-time translations, should you need them." Johnny slid them on, nodding in approval. "Stylish, but can they help me win at poker?" Bao shook his head. "They're for espionage, sir, not cheating at casinos." Johnny waved off the distinction. "Same skill set." Finally, Bao held up a wristwatch. "This one's special. Looks like a normal watch, but it has a built-in MP pulse. It can knock out any electrical system within a 10-meter radius. Useful for dealing with drones, security cameras, or if you need a dramatic exit." Johnny grinned. "A classic. Every spy should have one." The director, who had been watching all of this with growing concern, finally spoke up. "Enough theatrics. You'll be infiltrating Volta's estate tomorrow evening, We've arranged for you to pose as a cybersecurity consultant. Volta is hosting a summit for tech elites. This will be your way in. Get close, find proof of his involvement and disable his network. Understood? Johnny nodded, straightening his tie. Understood. Though I think we both know I'll be doing it my way. The director rolled her eyes. That's what I'm afraid of. The following evening, Johnny found himself behind the wheel of a sleek Aston Martin, speeding along the picturesque roads of the French Riviera. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo, the kind that made him feel every bit the sophisticated spy he believed himself to be. Bao sat in the passenger seat, nervously checking the mission details on his tablet. Sir, let's go over this one more time. Johnny revved the engine as they approached Volta's estate, a sprawling villa overlooking the Mediterranean with an opulence that screamed obscene wealth. A line of high-end luxury cars stretched toward the entrance, their drivers handing keys to a team of immaculately dressed valets. The estate itself was illuminated by golden lights, and the sounds of classical music and clinking champagne glasses floated through the night air. Johnny adjusted his cufflinks, offering Bao a reassuring grin. Relax, Bao. We waltz in, charm our way through the crowd, and walk out with the evidence. Simple. Bao, looking unconvinced, mumbled, Simple is never simple with you, sir. Johnny ignored him, pulling the car smoothly into place. As they stepped out, a tall, severe-looking security officer approached, tablet in hand. Names? He asked, eyeing Johnny with suspicion. Johnny flashed his most disarming smile. Richard St. John Smythe, cybersecurity expert. This is my assistant, Bernard. Bao groaned internally. The guard checked the guest list and nodded. Welcome to Volta's estate. Enjoy the evening. As they stepped inside, Johnny took a deep breath, scanning the glittering ballroom filled with some of the world's most powerful tech magnates and political elites. And then, at the center of it all, he saw Jason Volta himself, tall, charismatic, and utterly self-assured, shaking hands with a group of dignitaries. Johnny's eyes narrowed. Time to find out what Volta was really up to. As Johnny English stepped into Jason Volta's opulent estate, he couldn't help but marvel at the sheer extravagance. The grand ballroom was a dazzling spectacle, an architectural blend of classical elegance and modern technology. Golden chandeliers bathed the room in warm light, while digital displays along the walls showcased images of Volta's latest innovations, AI-driven security systems, self-driving yachts, and ultra-secure data storage solutions. Johnny adjusted his cufflinks, scanning the room with the casual confidence of a seasoned spy, though, in truth, he was making mental notes of potential escape routes. Bao, standing nervously beside him, muttered, Sir, please try not to cause a scene. Just blend in. Johnny smirked. Bao, blending in is my specialty. Watch and learn. Before Bao could object, Johnny grabbed a champagne flute from a passing waiter and made his way toward the heart of the gathering. Weaving effortlessly between groups of elegantly dressed guests, he kept his focus on one target, Jason Volta Dede. Volta was exactly as Johnny had imagined him, tall, effortlessly charming, and radiating the kind of confidence that only came with immense power. Dressed in a tailored white tuxedo, he held court with a group of billionaires and politicians, his easy laughter filling the room. Johnny edged closer, listening carefully. And that's why traditional cybersecurity is outdated, Volta was saying. The future isn't about keeping people out. It's about knowing everything before they even try. Predictive security, total control. Johnny took a sip of his champagne. Total control? That certainly sounded ominous. He decided to make his move. With a deliberate air of self-importance, he stepped into the circle and extended his hand. Richard St. John Smythe, cybersecurity expert. A pleasure. Volta turned to him, his piercing blue eyes scanning Johnny with mild curiosity. Then he shook his hand firmly. "Ah, St. John Smythe. I've heard of you." Johnny grinned. "Good things, I hope." Volta chuckled. "Interesting things." Johnny sensed that Volta wasn't easily fooled. He needed to tread carefully. "I must say, your approach to security is fascinating," Johnny continued. "Predictive algorithms, proactive intervention. It's revolutionary." Volta nodded. "Revolution is exactly what we need. Governments waste time reacting to threats. I prefer to eliminate risks before they become problems." Johnny feigned intrigue. "And how do you determine who's a risk?" Volta smiled, but there was something unsettling about it. "Information, Mr. St. John Smythe. Data. Patterns. People reveal more about themselves than they realize. All it takes is the right system to recognize the signs." Johnny kept his expression neutral, but internally, alarms were blaring. This wasn't just about cybersecurity. This was about surveillance, control, and absolute power. Before he could push further, a woman approached, a striking brunette in a crimson gown, her sharp eyes darting between Volta and Johnny. "Jason, we need to discuss the security briefing," she said, her voice clipped and professional. Volta sighed. "Of course. Excuse me, Mr. St. John Smythe. We'll continue our conversation later." Johnny gave a small nod. "I look forward to it." As Volta walked away, Johnny exhaled slowly. He had gotten close, but he needed more. Something concrete. Bao appeared at his side, looking panicked. "Sir, this place is crawling with security. We need to find the server room and extract some data before they get suspicious." Johnny took another sip of champagne, then casually placed the glass on a waiter's tray. "Then let's take a little detour." Navigating Volta's estate without drawing attention was no easy task. Security personnel stood at key access points, their earpieces crackling with hushed communications. Facial recognition cameras tracked every movement, and Johnny knew that if he did anything remotely suspicious, it would raise alarms. But Johnny had a gift for misdirection. Spotting a nearby waiter carrying a silver tray of hors d'oeuvre, Johnny grabbed a plate of stuffed mushrooms and confidently strode toward a restricted hallway. As expected, a security guard blocked his path. "Sir, this area is off limits to guests." Johnny smiled innocently. "Of course, I was just delivering these delightful little mushrooms to Mr. Volta's VIP lounge. He specifically requested them." The guard didn't budge. "I wasn't informed of any request." Johnny pretended to look shocked. "Oh dear. Are you telling me that a mere breakdown in communication will be the reason Mr. Volta doesn't get his favorite appetizer? Do you have any idea how temperamental billionaires can be about their finger food?" The guard hesitated, clearly debating whether arguing about mushrooms was worth it. Seizing the moment, Johnny gave an exaggerated sigh. "Fine. I'll just take them back. But if Volta asks why his special delivery never arrived, I'll be sure to mention you personally." "What's your name, by the way?" The guard's expression shifted slightly. He quickly stepped aside. "Make it quick." Johnny winked. "You're a credit to the profession, then." Balancing the plate of mushrooms like a seasoned caterer, he slipped past the checkpoint. "Sire." Bao, watching from a distance, shook his head in disbelief. That should not have worked. Once they were out of sight, Johnny ditched the mushrooms and focused on their true objective. They had studied the blueprints earlier, and Johnny knew that Volta's main server room had to be somewhere nearby. After creeping through the hallways, dodging a few roaming guards, they found it. A heavy steel door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Johnny gestured toward the door. "After you, Bao." Bao stared at him. "Sir, it's locked." How exactly do you expect me to? Johnny lifted his wrist and pressed a button on his watch. A soft blue pulse emitted outward, instantly disabling the electronic lock. Bao blinked. Oh, that was surprisingly smooth. Johnny grinned. Try to have a little faith, Bao. Now let's see what Volta's hiding. As they slipped into the server room, rows of glowing data towers hummed softly around them. The air was cool, sterile, and heavy with the scent of cutting-edge technology. Bao quickly got to work, plugging a USB device into the system. Lines of code flashed across the screen as he began extracting Volta's files. Johnny tapped his fingers against the desk, keeping watch. Something didn't feel right. And then, a voice crackled over the intercom. Intruder detected. Johnny's stomach dropped. They had tripped the alarm. Bao's eyes went wide. Sir, we need to leave, now. Johnny exhaled. Oh, Bao, it wouldn't be a mission without a bit of excitement, he cracked his knuckles. Time for Plan B. Bao groaned. There was never a Plan A, was there? Johnny grinned. Not really. The moment the robotic voice announced intruder detected, red warning lights began flashing across the server room. A high-pitched security alarm blared, echoing through the halls of Volta's estate. Johnny English and Bao exchanged a brief glance, both of them knowing that they were in deep trouble. Johnny, ever the optimist, cracked his knuckles. Well, that escalated quickly. Bao, on the other hand, was in full panic mode. He frantically yanked the USB drive out of the server and stuffed it into his pocket. Sir, we need to move. Now. Johnny gestured towards the only door, beyond which the sounds of approaching guards could be heard. Boots stomping against marble floors. Guns being cocked. He sighed. Yes, Bao, I'm aware of our predicament, and fortunately, I have just the thing for this exact situation. With an air of absolute confidence, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, sleek black device, one of Q Branch's latest experimental gadgets. Bao squinted. What is that? A grenade? Johnny grinned. A distraction. He pressed a button, then tossed the device onto the floor just as the guards burst through the door. The moment the gadget hit the ground, a blinding flash of light erupted, followed by an ear-splitting burst of white noise. The guards staggered backward, clutching their ears, their vision blurred. Move! Johnny barked, grabbing Bao by the arm and yanking him out of the room. They sprinted down the dimly lit corridor, Johnny leading the way, while Bao struggled to keep up. Where exactly are we going? Bao panted. Johnny dodged past a security drone hovering along the ceiling, barely missing its scanning beam. Exit strategy, Bao. It's all about exit strategy. They turned a corner, only to come face to face with another squad of Volta's guards, blocking their path. Johnny immediately slid to a halt, nearly toppling Bao. One of the guards, a burly man with a scar down his cheek, raised his weapon. Hands in the air. Now. Johnny sighed dramatically. Oh, come now, gentlemen. Surely we can settle this like civilized. Before he could finish, the lead guard pulled the trigger. A red laser bolt shot past Johnny's ear, barely missing him. Johnny's eyes widened. Okay, not civilized. In a flash, Johnny grabbed a silver serving tray from a side table and hurled it like a frisbee. The spinning metal plate smashed into the guard's face, sending him staggering backward. Run! Johnny shouted, grabbing Bao's collar and pulling him in the opposite direction. They dashed through a lavish sitting room, knocking over an expensive glass sculpture in the process. Bao winced. I hope that wasn't priceless. Johnny didn't slow down. Oh, it definitely was. As they reached the end of the hallway, they found themselves standing on a second-floor balcony overlooking Volta's sprawling garden. Below them, A long rectangular swimming pool stretched out like a shimmering escape route. "Jump," Johnny declared. Bow's eyes widened in horror. "Are you insane? That's at least 20 feet down. It's either that or get shot," Johnny pointed out. More gunfire erupted behind them. Johnny didn't hesitate. He leapt off the balcony, executing what he imagined was a perfectly graceful dive. In reality, he flopped mid-air, flailing his arms wildly before belly flopping straight into the pool. The impact sent a massive splash of water into the air. Bow, still on the balcony, groaned. "I cannot believe I'm doing this." With a resigned sigh, he jumped, landing in the pool with considerably more elegance than Johnny. They both surfaced, gasping for air, just as security floodlights flicked on, illuminating the pool. A voice bellowed from above. "We have them! Open fire!" Johnny's eyes darted around. They needed a way out. Fast. Then he spotted it. A nearby pool maintenance cart stacked with towels, a first aid kit, and, more importantly, a golf cart parked beside it. "Bo, my dear friend, I hope you know how to hot-wire a vehicle." Bow followed Johnny's gaze and his face paled. "Oh no." Johnny grinned. "Oh yes." They scrambled out of the pool, soaking wet and dripping onto the pavement. Johnny ran to the golf cart, hopped in, and frantically searched for the ignition. Bow, already groaning, yanked out a few wires, and within seconds, the engine roared to life. Johnny beamed. "Bo, you surprise me." "Drive!" Bow shouted as the first bullets pinged against the pavement behind them. Johnny floored it. The golf cart shot forward at a blistering 15 miles per hour. The guards, armed with high-tech rifles and night vision goggles, began pursuing them on foot. Johnny glanced in the rearview mirror. They are literally running faster than us. Bow, panicking, pointed toward a row of sleek motorcycles parked nearby. "Those! We need those!" Johnny yanked the wheel, veering the golf cart sharply to the left. The vehicle tilted dangerously on two wheels before landing with a bone-rattling thud. They leapt out, raced to the motorcycles, and Johnny wasted no time smashing his elbow into a bike's ignition panel. The engine roared to life just as the first guards reached them. "Hop on!" Johnny yelled. Bow barely had time to register what was happening before Johnny revved the throttle and took off. The roar of the motorcycle's engine echoed through the night as they sped through Volta's estate. Behind them, guards mounted their own bikes, giving chase across the manicured gardens. Johnny leaned forward, dodging low-hanging branches and expertly weaving between ornamental statues and fountains. "Faster! They're gaining on us!" Bow shouted. Johnny's eyes narrowed as he spotted their way out. A narrow hedge-lined pathway leading straight toward the estate's outer wall. There was only one problem. The gates were locked. Bow noticed too. "We're going to crash. Turn back." Johnny smirked. "Never retreat, Bow. Only advance." With absolute confidence, he yanked a flare gun from his jacket, aimed at the gate's electronic panel, and fired. The flare struck the control box, short-circuiting the system. Sparks flew, and the gates began opening just in time. Johnny and Bow roared through the gap, bursting onto the open road. Behind them, the guards skidded to a halt, unable to keep up. Johnny glanced back and smirked. "And that, my dear Bow, is how you make an exit." Bow, soaked, exhausted, and breathless, simply groaned. They had escaped, but they both knew this was far from over. Johnny English and Bow sped down the darkened French countryside roads, the wind whipping against their drenched clothes. The scent of damp earth and gasoline filled the air as the motorcycle's tires hummed against the pavement. The adrenaline from their daring escape still pulsed through their veins, but neither of them dared to speak until the city lights of Paris appeared in the distance. Bao, gripping Johnny's shoulders tightly, finally broke the silence. "Sir, we need to figure out our next move. That USB drive holds everything we need to expose Volta." Johnny, eyes fixed on the road ahead, gave a confident nod. "And what do we do when we have a valuable secret, Bao?" Bao sighed. "We hide it?" Johnny grinned. "No, we parade it right under the enemy's nose." Bao winced, but before he could protest, Johnny swerved onto a side street, bringing them to an abrupt stop in front of a dimly lit cafe. The neon sign flickered, reflecting off the rain-slick pavement. The quiet hum of late-night Parisians filled the air as the two agents dismounted. "Sir, why are we stopping here?" Bao asked, looking around warily. Johnny wiped the water from his forehead. "Because no one would suspect two British spies to hide in plain sight at a cafe, sipping overpriced espresso." Bao sighed but followed Johnny inside. The cafe was small and rustic, the air thick with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and pastries. They settled into a quiet booth near the back. Johnny retrieved the USB drive from his pocket and held it up between his fingers. This little stick of information could topple Volta's entire operation. Bao leaned in. "We need to access the data, but we can't just plug it into any device. Volta's security might have placed a tracker in the drive. If we open it on an unsecured system, they'll know exactly where we are." Johnny leaned back, tapping his chin. "Then we need someone who can break into this safely. Someone off the grid." Bao's expression darkened. "Are you suggesting we contact a hacker?" Johnny smirked. "Not just any hacker." After finishing their coffee, Johnny taking twice as long to sip dramatically, they left the cafe and made their way through the winding alleys of Paris. Bao checked over his shoulder every few minutes, ensuring they weren't being followed. Johnny, however, walked with absolute confidence, hands in his pockets. "You worry too much, Bao. We're fine." Bao muttered under his breath. "That's what you said before we crashed a golf cart into a hedge." After nearly an hour of navigating the labyrinthine back streets, they arrived at their destination, a seemingly abandoned bookstore. Its front window was covered in dust, and a faded sign read "Fermé," closed. Johnny rapped on the door 3 times, waited, then knocked twice more. Silence. Bao frowned. "Are you sure this is the right place?" Before Johnny could answer, the door creaked open by an inch, revealing a single dark eye peering out. A voice, low and wary, whispered, "Who sent you?" Johnny grinned. "The Queen." The door swung open just enough for them to slip inside before slamming shut behind them. The room was cluttered with bookshelves, cables, and glowing computer monitors. The only source of light came from a half-dozen screens, each displaying complex code, surveillance footage, and a constant stream of encrypted messages. At the center of it all sat a woman, her short, silver-dyed hair messy from long nights spent hunched over a keyboard. Her fingers flew across a mechanical keyboard, the clacking echoing in the dimly lit space. She didn't bother looking at them. "If you're here, it means you've got something dangerous." Johnny held up the USB drive. "We need to crack this, quietly." She snatched the device from his hand, twirling it between her fingers. "State surveillance? Military intelligence?" Bao hesitated. "Cyber warfare." That made her pause. She studied them properly this time, her eyes narrowing. "You two aren't just tourists who got lost in Paris, are you?" Johnny leaned against a desk. "We prefer the term freelance specialists." She scoffed, but plugged the USB into a heavily modified laptop, immediately isolating the device in a sandboxed system. Lines of code flooded the screen as she bypassed the security protocols. "Give me a minute." As she worked, Johnny wandered the room, eyeing a dusty chessboard. "Ever play?" he asked, moving a pawn forward. She didn't look up. I prefer games I can't lose. Johnny smirked. So do I. Minutes passed in silence as the hacker's fingers danced over the keyboard. Then, suddenly, got it. Bao and Johnny rushed over as a series of encrypted files appeared on screen. The hacker quickly scanned through them, eyes widening. This is massive, she murmured. These files contain the entire blueprint of Volta's cyber attack plan. If this information gets leaked, his empire crumbles overnight. Bao frowned. Then why hasn't he destroyed it? The hacker turned to them, her expression serious. Because it's not just an attack plan. It's live access to hundreds of global security systems. This drive is the key to every government's cyber defenses. Johnny let out a low whistle. That explains why he's so desperate to keep it. Bao turned to Johnny, voice urgent. Sir, we need to get this to Mi-7 immediately. The hacker shook her head. Not so fast. Volta's cyber network is watching for any unauthorized data movement. The moment you upload this to the Mi-7 servers, he'll know exactly where you are. Johnny grinned. Then we don't upload it. Bao blinked. Excuse me? Johnny straightened his tie. We use it. If this drive gives Volta access to the world's security systems, then it also gives us access to him. The hacker tilted her head, intrigued. Go on. Johnny leaned over the desk. We don't hand this over to Mi-7 just yet. First, we use it to trace Volta's digital footprint, find his weak points, uncover his next move. Then we strike first. Bao hesitated. That's risky. Johnny smirked. So is trusting a man with a private island and an army of cybernetic henchmen. The hacker considered for a moment, then nodded. I like it. But if you're going after Volta, you'll need more than just luck. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small encrypted phone. This will keep you off the grid, and if you need my help, just call. Johnny pocketed the phone, flashing his trademark grin. A pleasure doing business. As they stepped out into the cool Paris night, Bao sighed. Sir, I have a bad feeling about this. Johnny clapped a hand on his shoulder. That, Bao, is the feeling of adventure. As they disappeared into the shadows, the hacker watched them go, a knowing smile playing on her lips. The game had begun, and Johnny English was making the first move. The cold Parisian air bit at Johnny English's face as he and Bao walked briskly through the cobblestone streets, moving away from the hacker's lair. The gravity of their discovery weighed on them. Volta had access to virtually every critical cyber system in the world. If his plan came to fruition, chaos would ripple across nations, leaving him as the ultimate puppeteer. Johnny, adjusting his tie, smirked. Bo, you do realize what this means. Bao, still scanning their surroundings for possible tales, sighed. Yes, sir. It means we have the most valuable piece of data in the world, and it also means Volta will stop at nothing to get it back. Johnny clapped him on the back. Precisely, which means we can't go running back to Mi-7 just yet. We need to make a move on our own terms. Bao's brow furrowed. And what, exactly, is your plan? Johnny stopped, turned dramatically, and pointed to a luxurious hotel across the street. The kind of place where billionaires and diplomats casually mingled over caviar and overpriced champagne. A golden sign above the entrance glowed in the night. Le Majestic Hotel. Bao groaned. Sir, please tell me we are not checking in. Johnny grinned. Bo, my dear friend, what better place to play the part of international men of mystery than an establishment that caters to the world's elite? Bao pinched the bridge of his nose. Sir, we have a cyber weapon in our hands, an international criminal hunting us, and your plan is to... What? Order room service? Johnny placed a hand on his heart. Bo, you wound me. This isn't about room service, though I do intend to enjoy it. This is about misdirection. If Volta expects us to run, we'll waltz straight into the lion's den and act like we belong." Bao sighed, but followed his boss inside. The lobby was a display of excessive wealth. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light on polished marble floors, while well-dressed guests clinked glasses and engaged in hushed conversations. The soft notes of a grand piano filled the space, and waiters glided between guests with trays of hors d'oeuvres. Johnny adjusted his cuffs, scanning the room. "Ah, yes, this feels like home," Bao muttered under his breath. "We've never stayed anywhere this expensive in our lives." A sharp-looking concierge approached, wearing a perfectly tailored uniform. "Bonsoir, messieurs. How may I assist you this evening?" Johnny, channeling his inner aristocrat, pulled out a gold card, one of my Seven's emergency expense accounts. He slid it across the counter with a knowing smile. "A suite, if you will. Top floor. The best you have." The concierge studied them carefully before nodding. "But of course, monsieur." Johnny gave a casual smirk. "Dr. Archibald Kensington. And this is my colleague, Professor Baustein." Bao's eyes widened, but he said nothing. The concierge typed rapidly into the system, his expression softening. "Ah, yes. A pleasure to host you, Dr. Kensington. Your suite is being prepared. May I offer you a drink while you wait?" Johnny beamed. "A martini. Shaken, not stirred." Bao sighed. "Just a water, please." Settling into their lavish suite, Johnny flung himself onto a velvet couch, stretching comfortably. "Now, Bao, this is how one conducts espionage with style." Bao, standing by the window, peeked through the curtains. "Sir, I still don't see how this helps us. We have the USB, but if Volta's people are tracking us, we've basically just put a target on our backs." Johnny sat up. "Exactly. If Volta believes we're naive enough to be sitting ducks, he'll send his men straight here. And when he does..." He pulled out the encrypted phone the hacker had given them. "We'll use this little gem to track them back to their lair." Bao sighed. "Sir, you're gambling with our lives." Johnny grinned. "Bo, that's not gambling. That's called strategic recklessness." Just then there was a knock at the door. Bao tensed. "Room service?" Johnny stood, adjusting his tie. "Or trouble?" He opened the door slightly, peeking through. A bellboy stood outside, holding a silver tray. "Your drinks, gentlemen." Johnny exhaled, relieved. "Ah, excellent." As he took the drinks, his eyes caught a reflection in the silver lid. Two men in black suits approaching from the hallway. His smirk vanished. "Bo?" Bao had already noticed. "We need to move." Johnny didn't hesitate. In one swift motion, he grabbed the tray and hurled it down the hallway, the drinks shattering as the silver lid clanged against the marble. The men flinched, momentarily distracted. "Run!" Johnny and Bao bolted through the suite, slamming the door shut just as bullets tore through the wood. Bao grabbed an armchair, barricading the entrance. "This isn't strategic recklessness, sir. This is just recklessness." Johnny dove behind the minibar, grabbing a bottle of champagne. "Bo, remind me. What happens when you shake a bottle of this vigorously?" Bao blinked. "It explodes." Johnny grinned. "Exactly." He shook the bottle furiously, and just as the door burst open, popped the cork, sending a pressurized stream of foam directly into the attackers' faces. The men stumbled back, blinded, giving Johnny enough time to tackle one of them. The second man lunged for Bao, who, panicking, grabbed a lamp and swung, knocking the attacker out cold. Johnny wrestled with the remaining man, their struggle knocking over furniture. With a final well-placed knee, Johnny sent him crashing onto the coffee table. Panting, Johnny straightened his suit. Well, that was invigorating. Bao, rubbing his head, groaned. Sir, what now? Johnny grabbed the phone. No, we see where they came from. He used the encrypted signal tracer, locking onto the attacker's communication frequency. A blinking red dot appeared on the screen, a location just outside Paris. Johnny smirked. Bao, it seems we've found Volta's next move. Bao groaned. We're going there, aren't we? Johnny grabbed his jacket. Absolutely. As sirens blared in the distance, they slipped out the back exit, disappearing into the Parisian night. The game of espionage had just reached its next level. The crisp Parisian night carried a sense of urgency as Johnny, English, and Bao navigated through the dimly lit alleys, putting distance between themselves and the chaos at the hotel. The blinking red dot on their tracker pulsed rhythmically, drawing them toward their next destination, an unknown location just outside the city. Their narrow escape from Volta's men had only reaffirmed what they already knew. The cybercriminal was onto them, and his reach was far greater than anticipated. Bao, still catching his breath, glanced at Johnny. Sir, I assume we're not heading to the embassy for backup? Johnny adjusted his tie, unfazed. Bo, why on earth would we do something sensible when we have the element of unpredictability on our side? Bao sighed. So, we're going there alone? Johnny flashed a confident smirk. Exactly. With no time to waste, they commandeered a nearby scooter, much to Bao's dismay. Johnny insisted that the smaller vehicle would allow them to maneuver through traffic unseen, though the sight of two grown men in suits squeezed onto a tiny motorbike hardly screamed stealth. As they weaved through the city streets, the coordinates led them toward the outskirts of Paris, where the grand architecture gave way to industrial complexes and abandoned warehouses. The tracker beeped faster as they approached their destination, a fortified estate nestled behind towering iron gates, its presence exuding power and secrecy. Bao swallowed hard. That looks ominous. Johnny nodded. Perfect place for a villain's lair, wouldn't you say? Gaining access was the first challenge. Security cameras dotted the perimeter, and armed guards patrolled in pairs, making traditional infiltration difficult. While Bao meticulously studied the layout, suggesting careful planning, Johnny had already scaled a nearby tree, peering over the fence. Sir, what are you doing? Bao whispered in exasperation. Johnny shushed him. Thinking. Before Bao could argue, Johnny leaped from the tree branch, grabbing onto the fence and hoisting himself over with surprising agility. He landed not so gracefully in a well-manicured hedge, disappearing from sight. Bao muttered under his breath. This is going to be one of those nights, isn't it? Taking a deep breath, he followed Johnny's lead, though significantly less theatrically, cautiously making his way over the fence. On the other side, Johnny was already creeping toward the main building, dodging security patrols with uncharacteristic finesse. Bao caught up to him just as Johnny pressed himself against a stone pillar, peeking inside one of the tall windows. Inside, a lavishly decorated ballroom stretched before them. Crystal chandeliers cast shimmering reflections over a gathering of the world's elite, politicians, business magnates, and tech moguls, all engaged in hushed conversations. And at the center of it all stood Jason Volta, impeccably dressed, holding a champagne glass as he addressed a small group. Johnny whispered, Bo, we've just stumbled upon the heart of the operation. Bao's expression darkened. This isn't just a cybercrime syndicate. This is something much bigger. Johnny smirked. Then we'd better crash the party. Breaking into an elite gathering was one thing. Blending in without raising suspicion? That required a bit more creativity. Johnny glanced around and spotted a delivery van parked near a side entrance, its back doors slightly ajar. He gestured to Bao and hurried over, peeking inside to find catering uniforms neatly folded in stacks. Bao hesitated. "Sir, you can't be serious." Johnny was already slipping into a white jacket, adjusting the fit. "Bo, when in doubt, always go undercover." Reluctantly, Bao grabbed a uniform as well. Moments later, the two of them strode confidently through the service entrance, carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres as they seamlessly merged with the catering staff. Inside, the ballroom buzzed with conversation, a symphony of laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. Johnny moved gracefully through the crowd, eavesdropping as he served guests, picking up bits of intriguing conversation. A woman in a sparkling black dress murmured to a guest, "Volta says the final phase is nearly complete." A sharply dressed diplomat nodded. "And once the world is in chaos, he'll be the only one with the power to restore order." Bao leaned in. "Sir, this isn't just about hacking. He's planning something much bigger." Johnny smirked. "Then it's a good thing we're here, isn't it?" Their mission took an unexpected turn when a stern-looking butler approached, eyeing them suspiciously. "You, the new one," he said, pointing at Johnny. "Come with me. Mr. Volta requires something from the kitchen." Bao tensed. "Sir." Johnny flashed a confident smile. "Don't worry, Bao. I'll be back before dessert." With that, Johnny followed the butler through a corridor, leading away from the ballroom. The further they went, the quieter it became, until they reached a heavily secured side room. The butler stopped at the door and motioned for Johnny to enter. As Johnny stepped inside, the door clicked shut behind him, locking. The room was dimly lit, the only source of illumination coming from a large digital display mounted on the wall, showcasing a global map covered in flashing red dots, a real-time cybernetic control interface. And standing before it, his back turned, was Jason Volta. Without looking, Volta spoke. "You know English. I have to say, I expected you to be a bit more discreet." Johnny's eyes flicked around the room, scanning for an escape. "Ah, so you do know me. Good. That saves me an awkward introduction." Volta finally turned, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Oh, I know exactly who you are. The world may see you as a bumbling relic of the past, but I see something else, a nuisance, and unfortunately for you." He gestured toward the digital screen. "I don't tolerate nuisances." Before Johnny could respond, two massive security guards stepped forward, each the size of a small refrigerator. Johnny sighed. "Gentlemen, before you start, I'd just like to say, I bruise easily." One of the guards cracked his knuckles. Johnny winced. "Right, I had to try." And then the first punch flew. As Johnny English found himself trapped inside Volta's inner sanctum, Bao was left alone in the ballroom, unaware of his partner's predicament. Meanwhile, Volta's master plan was about to unfold, and time was running out. Would Johnny escape in time? Would Bao realize something was wrong before it was too late? The game was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. Johnny English barely had time to react as the first punch came flying toward him. With a quick duck, he narrowly avoided getting his face rearranged, but the moment of victory was short-lived. The second guard lunged, and before Johnny could properly dodge, a meaty fist collided with his shoulder, sending him stumbling backward. "All right, gentlemen," Johnny said, adjusting his tie. "I understand the need for a little warm-up, but I think we should consider—" A swift kick to his stomach interrupted his words, doubling him over as he staggered against the desk behind him. His hand brushed against the keyboard of the cybernetic control panel, momentarily illuminating one of the flashing red icons on the massive screen above. Though his ribs were aching, he couldn't help but steal a glance. The world map on the display showed countless locations marked in red, each representing a crucial cyber infrastructure: banks, airports, power grids. And they were all linked to one central command, Jason Volta's private system. Volta stepped forward, watching Johnny with mild amusement. "You know, English, I expected a bit more from my seven's so-called best." Johnny straightened, attempting to maintain an air of composure. "Ah, but that's where you're mistaken. You see, I'm not their best. I'm their most unpredictable." Before the guards could grab him again, Johnny slammed his palm down on the keyboard, activating a command. The screen flickered, and suddenly an alarm blared through the room. Volta's expression darkened. "What did you just do?" Johnny glanced at the screen and grinned. "I think I may have just put your little operation on shuffle mode." A robotic voice echoed from the speakers. "Unauthorized action detected. Security override engaged. Lockdown in 10, 9. Volta's guards tensed, exchanging uncertain glances. Johnny smirked. "Now, if you'll excuse me." He grabbed a champagne bottle from a side table and swung it with force, shattering it over the nearest guard's head. The man staggered, dazed. Seizing the opportunity, Johnny kicked over a chair, sending it skidding across the floor and tangling up the second guard's legs. Volta, clearly furious, barked orders. "Stop him, now!" Johnny had no intention of sticking around. With one swift movement, he dove behind the desk, yanked a bundle of power cables, and yanked hard, sending sparks flying as the control panel short-circuited. The alarms grew louder, and on the screen, several of Volta's cyberattack sequences began failing. System disruption detected. Rerouting in progress. Johnny wasn't exactly sure what he had done, but judging by the look of pure rage on Volta's face, it was something very, very inconvenient for the villain's plans. "English, you're meddling in things far beyond your pay grade," Volta growled. Johnny winked. "Well, I've always been a bit of an overachiever." Just as the second guard lunged for him, Johnny grabbed a silver serving tray from a nearby table, using it as an impromptu shield, deflecting the attack before smacking the man across the head with it. As the guard stumbled, Johnny bolted for the door, only to find it locked. He spun around, exhaling sharply. Right. That would have been too easy. Meanwhile, in the ballroom, Bao was growing concerned. It had been too long since Johnny had been whisked away by Volta's butler, and the fact that no one had come back to fetch him was an even bigger red flag. Keeping his tray steady, Bao discreetly scanned the room. The guests were still engaged in hushed conversations, most of them oblivious to what was unfolding elsewhere in the estate. But among them, a few men dressed in black suits stood out, clearly Volta's security team. Bao adjusted his fake waiter's bow tie, deciding he needed to act. Discreetly placing his tray on a table, he maneuvered toward the side corridor where Johnny had disappeared. As soon as he reached the hallway, he spotted 2 armed guards blocking the entrance. Bao exhaled. Well, subtlety is clearly out of the question. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny packet of pepper, one of Johnny's signature, and seemingly useless, emergency tools. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, pretending to trip. "Oops, so sorry, gentlemen," he exclaimed, throwing the pepper into the air. The fine dust immediately hit the guards' faces, and within seconds they were coughing, sneezing, and rubbing their eyes. Bao muttered, "I can't believe that actually worked." Without wasting a second, he rushed past them and through the doors. Back inside the locked room, Johnny was doing his best to dodge the guards, but his luck was running out. The first guard grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back. "Time's up, English," Volta sneered. Johnny gritted his teeth. "I'd love to stay and chat, but I really must be going." At that exact moment, the door burst open, and Bao stormed in. "Sir, are you all right?" Johnny grinned. "Ah, Bao. Always a pleasure." Bao threw a fire extinguisher at Johnny, who caught it and sprayed it directly into the guards' faces, creating a thick cloud of white mist. Taking advantage of the chaos, Johnny and Bao rushed toward the emergency exit, but Volta wasn't giving up that easily. "Stop them!" Volta shouted. As more guards flooded the room, Johnny grabbed a nearby chair, tossing it through a glass window. The sharp sound of shattering glass echoed as he and Bao leapt through, landing ungracefully on the gravel below. Behind them, alarms continued to blare, signaling a full-blown security breach. As they scrambled to their feet, Johnny looked at Bao. "I'd say that went rather well." Bao dusted himself off, exasperated. "Sir, we're being pursued by half of Volta's security force. How exactly is this going well?" Johnny smirked. "Because we're still alive, Bao. And more importantly," he held up a tiny USB drive he had swiped from the control panel. "We have this." Bao's eyes widened. "Is that everything we need to take Volta down?" Johnny confirmed. But before they could celebrate, the sound of approaching vehicles made them turn. A fleet of black SUVs roared toward them, headlights piercing through the night. Johnny sighed. And now for the hard part. As Volta's men closed in, Johnny and Bao took off running. The chase was on, and time was running out. Johnny English and Bao sprinted through the moonlit estate grounds, their polished shoes crunching against the gravel as they dodged statues, fountains, and neatly trimmed hedges. Behind them, Volta's security team surged forward, a pack of determined pursuers armed with stun batons and handguns. The roaring engines of black SUVs punctuated the night air, their headlights cutting through the darkness like hunting beacons. Bao, panting heavily, cast a glance over his shoulder. "Sir, we can't outrun vehicles on foot. We need a plan." Johnny, ever the optimist, barely seemed concerned. "Bo, the key to any great escape is not speed. It's style." Just as Bao was about to question what that meant, Johnny grabbed his wrist and yanked him sideways, sending both of them crashing through a row of hedges. Leaves and branches snapped as they tumbled into a secluded garage area where an array of luxury sports cars gleamed under the estate's ambient lighting. Johnny's eyes gleamed. "Ah, now we're talking." Bao, trying to dislodge a twig from his hair, looked at the vehicles with skepticism. "Sir, we don't have the keys." Johnny confidently strode toward a sleek red Aston Martin, brushing his hand along its polished surface. Bao, a true spy, never let something as trivial as a key stand in his way. He reached into his jacket and produced a small electronic device, something that vaguely resembled a TV remote. Bao blinked. "What is that?" Johnny smirked. "And my 7 universal car hacking device." He pressed a button. Nothing happened. Bao raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure it works?" Johnny furrowed his brows and pressed another button. The garage lights flickered off and on. The security guards' shouts grew closer. Bao, panicked, whispered, "Sir, we need to go." "Now." Johnny frowned and tapped the device vigorously. Suddenly, the Aston Martin roared to life. Its dashboard lit up, headlights flashed, and the engine purred like a caged beast. Johnny grinned, throwing himself into the driver's seat. "Hop in, Bao." Bao scrambled into the passenger seat just as gunfire erupted behind them, bullets ricocheting off the concrete walls. Johnny floored the accelerator, and the tires screeched against the smooth floor before the car shot forward. The garage doors weren't open. "Sir, we're about to hit a..." Johnny grabbed a button on the dashboard labeled Ejecto Mode and slammed it. Instead of launching them into the air, the front bumper extended into a battering ram, smashing straight through the garage doors in a spectacular explosion of wood and metal shards. They burst onto the estate's main road just as 3 black SUVs gave chase, their powerful engines roaring in pursuit. Johnny navigated the winding road with an ease that suggested he had done this 1,000 times before, though mostly in his imagination. The car skidded around tight corners, narrowly avoiding statues and garden features, while bullets whizzed past them. "Bo, I believe we're in a spot of bother," Johnny said cheerfully, shifting gears. Bao, gripping the dashboard for dear life, groaned. "Sir, I would classify this as more than a spot. They're gaining on us." Johnny glanced at the dashboard, where an assortment of spy gadgets blinked invitingly. What does this button do?" he mused, pressing a blue switch. Immediately, oil sprayed from the back of the car, coating the road. The first SUV hit the slick patch and spun out of control, flipping onto its side in a dramatic burst of sparks. Johnny chuckled. "Still works like a charm." The remaining SUVs dodged the oil slick and accelerated, drawing closer. "Sir, I don't suppose this car has missiles?" Bo asked hopefully. Johnny clicked his tongue. "Bo, what do you take me for? A reckless lunatic?" Before Bao could answer, Johnny slammed another button, deploying tiny caltrops onto the road. The second SUV's tires burst instantly, sending it careening into a ditch. Only one remained. This driver, clearly smarter than the others, didn't fall for Johnny's tricks. Instead, he rammed the Aston Martin's bumper, sending both Johnny and Bao lurching forward. Bao's face paled. "Sir, I think we need to leave this car immediately." Johnny sighed. "Yes, I suppose you're right." He jerked the wheel, sending the car into a sudden, controlled skid before yanking a red lever labeled Eject.Y Dome. Bao's eyes widened. "Oh no, Notig." Before he could finish, both their seats launched into the air, propelling them high above the road. The Aston Martin, now unmanned, collided with the final SUV in a spectacular crash, sending both vehicles tumbling into a nearby pond. Johnny and Bao, now soaring through the air, flailed as their seat parachutes deployed, slowing their descent. Bao groaned. "Sir, this was not my idea of a controlled getaway." Johnny, adjusting his tie mid-air, grinned. "But you must admit, Bao, it's rather exhilarating." Their parachutes caught a gust of wind, sending them drifting away from the road and toward a small village below. Bao squinted. "Where exactly are we landing?" Johnny glanced downward. "Oh, that's unfortunate." Bao followed his gaze just in time to see that they were headed straight for the rooftop of a local bakery. Seconds later, they crashed through the thatched roof, sending flour, dough, and baking utensils flying in all directions. Covered in a thick layer of white powder, Johnny coughed and stood up, brushing off his tuxedo. Bao groaned from under a pile of baguettes. "Sir, we need a new plan." Johnny smiled. "Nonsense, Bao. We've successfully escaped." Just as he said that, the bakery door burst open, and an angry French baker wielding a rolling pin stomped in. Johnny straightened. A minor hiccup. The baker screamed in rapid French. Bao sighed. "Sir, I don't suppose you speak French." Johnny grinned. "Just enough to order a croissant. But I'm fairly certain this gentleman isn't offering us breakfast." The baker raised his rolling pin menacingly. Johnny swallowed hard. "Both run." And just like that, the chase continued. But this time, instead of an army of high-tech mercenaries, it was a very angry Frenchman with a surprisingly strong throwing arm. Johnny English and Bao dashed out of the flour-covered bakery, their tailored suits now resembling the uniforms of disheveled pastry chefs. Behind them, the enraged French baker, his face red with fury, hurled a rolling pin straight at them. The wooden cylinder spun through the air, narrowly missing Johnny's head before embedding itself in the wooden doorframe with a thunk. "Bo, I do believe we have overstayed our welcome," Johnny huffed as they sprinted down the cobblestone street. Bao, brushing flour from his face, shot him a glare. "Sir, if I recall correctly, we weren't exactly invited to begin with." The sleepy village, which had been peacefully unaware of their escapades, suddenly sprang to life. Window shutters creaked open, shopkeepers poked their heads out, and pedestrians stopped in their tracks to stare at the two men bolting down the road, leaving a trail of flour dust in their wake. Bao glanced back. "Sir, I think we should try to blend in." Johnny smirked. "Excellent idea, Bao. The key to blending in is confidence and a firm grasp of the local customs." Without breaking stride, he yanked a beret off a startled street vendor's stall, plopped it onto his head at a jaunty angle, and grabbed a baguette from a basket, tucking it under his arm as though he were a lifelong Parisian. Bao groaned. That's not how blending in works, sir." Before Johnny could retort, a motorcycle's engine revved behind them. They turned just in time to see two black-clad operatives speeding toward them, their faces obscured by tinted visors. "Oh, lovely," Johnny muttered. "More uninvited guests." The lead motorcyclist pulled a handgun from his leather jacket, taking aim. Bao's voice cracked. "Sir, I believe now would be a good time to not be here." Johnny grabbed Bao by the arm and yanked him sideways, diving into a bustling outdoor cafe. The wooden tables clattered as they crashed through them, sending cappuccinos flying and startled diners shrieking. Bao tumbled over a chair, barely managing to stay upright. "Sir, do you ever use doors like a normal person?" Johnny, adjusting his beret, dusted off his lapels. "Where's the fun in that?" A bullet zipped past, shattering a wine bottle on a nearby table. The cafe owner, a stocky man with an impressive mustache, bellowed, "Mon Dieu!" and dove behind the counter. Johnny grabbed a silver tray from a waiter's hand, using it as an impromptu shield as he and Bao bolted through the back of the cafe and into a narrow alleyway. They sprinted through the tight alley, ducking under clotheslines and leaping over crates, with the motorcycle assassins hot on their heels. Bao gasped, "Sir, I don't think we can outrun motorcycles in an alley this narrow." Johnny smirked. "Who said anything about outrunning?" Just as the alley reached a dead end, Johnny grabbed a metal drain pipe and started climbing up the side of a building. Bao stared in horror. "Sir, are we really climbing, Bao? It's excellent for the core muscles." Johnny called down. Grumbling, Bao followed, pulling himself up as fast as he could while below them. The two operatives skidded to a stop. One of them pointed upwards and barked something into a hidden earpiece. As Johnny and Bao scrambled onto the rooftop, a helicopter suddenly whirred into view, its rotor blades slicing the air above them. Bao groaned. "Sir, I was really hoping we wouldn't have to deal with a helicopter today." Johnny exhaled, eyeing the cable dangling from the aircraft side. "Well, that's unfortunate, Bao, because I love helicopters." Before Bao could protest, Johnny sprinted forward, leaped off the edge of the rooftop, and grabbed onto the cable mid-air. Bao's jaw dropped. "Sir, you are not serious." Realizing he had no choice, he took a deep breath and leapt after Johnny, catching the cable just as the helicopter ascended sharply. The village shrunk beneath them, the rooftops and streets becoming mere details in a postcard-worthy aerial view. The motorcyclists on the ground aimed their weapons but hesitated. Shooting them now could send bullets straight into the helicopter. Johnny smirked. "See, Bao? Always think one step ahead." Bao clung to the cable for dear life. "Sir, where exactly is this helicopter taking us?" Johnny frowned, glancing up. He hadn't actually thought that far ahead. Then, a familiar voice crackled through a hidden speaker inside the aircraft. "Ah, Mr. English, you never cease to amaze me with your resistance to common sense." Bao's face paled. "Oh no," Johnny sighed. "Oh yes." The helicopter tilted, and suddenly they were no longer joyriding through the sky. They were being delivered straight into the lion's den. Within minutes, the helicopter landed on a massive luxury yacht anchored far from the coastline. The white exterior gleamed under the midday sun, and a row of armed guards stood waiting on the deck. Johnny and Bao were unceremoniously dragged off the cable and onto the yacht's sleek flooring, where a pair of polished leather shoes came into view. A slow clap echoed. Johnny groaned before even looking up. I'd recognize that smug applause anywhere. Standing before them, clad in an immaculate designer suit, was none other than Jason Volta, the tech billionaire mastermind behind their current predicament. Volta smirked, arms crossed. You know, English, for a retired agent, you're really putting in a lot of overtime. Johnny dusted himself off, straightened his tie, and looked Volta dead in the eyes. What can I say? Some men golf. I save the world. Volta chuckled, shaking his head. That's a bold statement from a man who just walked into my trap. Johnny's confident expression faltered. Bao whispered, Sir, I think we actually walked into his trap this time. Johnny sighed. Bo, I hate it when you're right. Volta stepped forward. I'd love to stay and chat, but I have very important business to attend to. He gestured to his guards. Put them in the holding chamber. I'll deal with them later. As the guards grabbed Johnny and Bao, Johnny leaned toward his partner. Bo, he whispered, how do you feel about escaping from a heavily fortified yacht? Bao closed his eyes. Sir, I was really hoping you wouldn't ask me that. Johnny grinned. Perfect, because I have a plan. Bao sighed. Of course you do. And with that, they were dragged below deck, right into another ridiculous predicament. Johnny English and Bao were shoved into a dimly lit chamber deep within Jason Volta's ultra-modern luxury yacht. The sleek white walls hummed softly, an indication of the advanced security systems embedded within them. The heavy reinforced metal door clanked shut behind them, and the unmistakable sound of an electronic locking mechanism engaging echoed through the confined space. Bao immediately rushed toward the door, pressing his ear against it. Sir, I don't hear any movement outside. They must have left us alone for now. Johnny, adjusting his slightly disheveled tie, gave the room a once-over. Bo, if I've learned anything from my vast experience in being captured, it's that villains never make the mistake of leaving us completely unsupervised. There's always a catch. Bao turned away from the door and scanned their surroundings. The room, though a holding chamber, was far from the grimy prison cells they were used to. Instead of rusted bars and concrete walls, plush white leather seating lined the sides. A glass coffee table sat in the center, and a minibar stocked with exotic liquors gleamed under a strip of LED lighting. Bao raised an eyebrow. Sir, are we in a luxury guest room? Johnny strolled to the bar, picking up a bottle of Chateau Margaux, inspecting the label with a nod of approval. Well, Bao, if you're going to imprison someone, might as well do it with style. Volta has taste, I'll give him that. Bao frowned. I don't think now is the time to admire the decor, sir. We need a way out. Johnny sighed, setting the bottle down. All right, let's assess. No visible vents, walls are solid, floors likely pressure sensitive, and judging by the complete lack of doorknob, I'd wager this door only opens from the outside. Bao nodded. Exactly. Which means we're in trouble. Johnny grinned. Nonsense, Bao. You seem to be forgetting that the world's greatest secret agent is standing right here. Bao glanced around. I don't see him, sir. Johnny's smirk faltered. That's very unkind, Bao. Johnny began rummaging through the minibar, examining every bottle, napkin, and utensil. Bao sighed. Sir, what exactly are you looking for? Johnny held up a bottle of highly carbonated sparkling water and grinned. An opportunity, Bao. Before Bao could protest, Johnny popped the cap, shaking the bottle violently before aiming it directly at the electronic lock. A jet of water sprayed out, short-circuiting the panel with a fizzing sizzle. Bao blinked. That actually worked? Johnny shrugged. Never underestimate the power of high-pressure hydration. The lock flickered before turning a deep red. Instead of unlocking, however, a mechanized voice rang out. Unauthorized interference detected. Activating security protocol. Bao paled. Sir, I think you just made it worse. The room suddenly shifted, the floor tilting ever so slightly as the walls began to close in. Johnny's eyes widened. Oh, that's not ideal. A timer appeared on the screen embedded in the wall. Security override in 90 seconds. Bao looked around in panic. Sir, what do? We don't have time to wait. Johnny tapped his chin. Right. We need a big distraction. He grabbed 3 bottles of high-proof whiskey, a napkin, and a cigar lighter from the bar. Quickly fashioning makeshift Molotov cocktails, he handed one to Bao. Sir, this is a terrible idea, Bao said, his voice shaking. Johnny nodded. Correct. And yet it's our only idea. With one swift motion, Johnny flung his bottle at the far wall, the glass shattering on impact. He then ignited the alcohol-soaked napkin in the second bottle, tossing it into the spreading puddle of whiskey. A small but sudden burst of flames erupted, triggering a fire alarm. Almost immediately, the door unlocked automatically, releasing a blast of halon gas to suppress the fire. Go, Bao, go! Johnny yelled, sprinting through the door. Bao hesitated for half a second before following him into the corridor beyond. The hallway outside was eerily quiet, lined with stainless steel walls and soft blue lighting. Security cameras swiveled, tracking their movements. Johnny stopped. Bo, we need to disable those cameras before. A blaring alarm echoed through the ship. Before that happens, Johnny sighed. Bao pointed ahead. Sir, incoming. 2 armed guards in black tactical gear emerged from an intersecting corridor. Johnny grabbed the nearest serving tray from a side table and flung it with unbelievable precision, striking the first guard squarely in the face. The man collapsed instantly. The second guard raised his weapon, but Bao lunged forward, tackling him into the wall. The 2 struggled for a moment before Bao delivered a surprisingly effective karate chop to the neck, knocking the man unconscious. Johnny blinked. Bo, I must say, I didn't know you had that in you. Bao panted. Neither did I, sir. Johnny grinned. Well, you know what they say. Adrenaline makes karate masters of us all. Johnny and Bao hurried down the corridor, taking cover behind a large decorative statue of Volta's face as more guards rushed past. Ahead, a door labeled Main Control Room caught Johnny's eye. That's our ticket, Bao, he whispered. They slipped inside just in time. Inside, the room was lined with holographic displays, security footage, and communication panels. At the center of it all sat Ophelia, the mysterious Russian agent Johnny had encountered earlier in their mission. She turned to face them, a sly smile playing on her lips. Took you long enough, Bao whispered. Sir, I don't think we should trust her. Johnny grinned. Bo, trust is a funny thing. Ophelia smirked. And in this business it's also very dangerous. She pressed a button, and suddenly, every screen in the room flickered, revealing Jason Volta's face. Well, 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 Volta's voice echoed through the speakers. You didn't really think you could escape me that easily, did you, English? Johnny sighed. Bo, remind me to never underestimate a tech billionaire. The yacht suddenly lurched forward, throwing them all off balance. Johnny scrambled to his feet. Bo, I have a feeling things are about to get dramatic. Bao groaned. Sir, I was hoping we could avoid that. Ophelia smirked, pulling a pistol from her thigh holster. Let's hope you two can swim." And with that, the entire ship plunged into chaos. Section 13. A plunge into chaos. As the yacht lurched violently, Johnny, Bao, and Ophelia struggled to stay upright. The sudden acceleration sent papers flying, monitors flickering, and alarms blaring throughout the control room. The luxurious high-tech ship, usually a beacon of modern engineering, was now a battleground of mayhem. Jason Volta's face still dominated the large holographic screens, his smirk unwavering. "You've been a constant nuisance, English," Volta's voice echoed through the speakers. "But I must admit your persistence is amusing. Unfortunately for you, this ship is no place for amateurs." Johnny dusted off his now slightly charred tuxedo jacket, frowning at the cufflinks that had come loose. "Volta, you're making a grave mistake. If you think I'm just going to let you sail off into the sunset with your nefarious plans intact, you've severely underestimated me." Volta chuckled. "Oh, I'm counting on your usual incompetence, English." Before Johnny could issue a witty retort, the yacht jolted again, causing a panel of monitors to detach from the ceiling, crashing onto the floor in a shower of sparks. Bao grabbed onto a nearby console. "Sir, I think he's remotely overriding the ship's controls. He's setting us up for something bad." Ophelia, calm as ever, checked her pistol before turning to Johnny. "We don't have time for speeches. We need to stop him now." Johnny gave her a skeptical look. "And you expect me to just trust you?" She holstered her weapon, stepping forward. "You don't have to trust me, but you do need my help." Johnny sighed. "Fine, but if you double-cross us, I'm lodging a very stern complaint with your government." With the ship in complete disarray, the trio knew that they had to act fast. If Volta had seized control remotely, their only chance was to cut the connection manually, which meant heading down to the engine room, where the ship's central power and navigation systems were located. Navigating the corridors was no easy feat. With every turn, the ship's tilting floors and flickering lights made it increasingly difficult to keep their footing. Crew members and guards scrambled for stability, some too distracted to notice the three fugitives sneaking past. "Sir, I think we're close," Bao whispered, pointing toward a stairwell leading downward. "This should take us to the engine control room." Johnny took a deep breath. "All right, Bao. Let's be subtle, quiet as shadows." He then proceeded to stumble noisily down the first few steps, nearly knocking over a nearby crate. Ophelia rolled her eyes. "Brilliant work." Ignoring her, Johnny adjusted his posture and signaled for them to move forward. They cautiously descended, moving past rows of whirring machinery, pulsing power grids, and interconnected wiring systems. The air grew thick with the smell of fuel and metal, and the dull hum of the ship's massive engine turbines vibrated beneath their feet. In the center of the room, they spotted the main control terminal, flashing red with multiple unauthorized access warnings. Bao frowned. "It's completely locked out. We need to override Volta's access." Johnny cracked his knuckles. "Leave it to me." Ophelia crossed her arms. "You know how to hack into a highly sophisticated military-grade security system?" Johnny scoffed. "Hacking is simply a matter of finesse, intelligence, and a certain je ne sais quoi." He then promptly smashed the keyboard with his fist. The screen buzzed, displaying error, unrecognized input. Bao groaned. "Sir, I don't think brute force is the answer." Johnny inspected the now slightly dented keyboard. "You'd be surprised how often it is." Ophelia shoved him aside, quickly typing in a series of complex commands. "I can reroute the security feed and manually disconnect Volta's external control, but I'll need a distraction." Johnny grinned. "Ah, distractions. My area of expertise." With Ophelia working on the system, Johnny and Bao turned their attention to two guards patrolling the engine room. Johnny whispered, "All right, Bao, we need something big. something that will take their attention away completely. Bao hesitated. Sir, every time you say that, things explode. Johnny nodded. Exactly. Grabbing a fire extinguisher, Johnny hurled it across the room, hitting a pressurized valve. The sudden burst of steam and noise startled the guards, sending them running in the opposite direction. Johnny turned to Bao. See? No explosions. At that precise moment, a small panel overheated from the pressure burst, triggering an electrical short circuit that caused a minor explosion near the turbine controls. Bao sighed. There it is. The noise alerted more guards, who now stormed the engine room. Ophelia yelled, I need 2 more minutes. Johnny turned to Bao. Looks like we'll have to hold them off. Grabbing a metal pipe, Johnny faced the oncoming guards with the determination of a man who had absolutely no strategy. Bao, reluctantly arming himself with a wrench, muttered, I really should have retired early. As the guards opened fire, Johnny leapt behind a large control panel, narrowly dodging bullets. He popped up just long enough to fling a heavy toolbox at one of the assailants, knocking him out instantly. Bao, ever the practical one, swung his wrench at the nearest attacker's legs, sending the man crashing into a pile of loose cables. Johnny grinned. Bo, I knew you had it in you. Bao, slightly out of breath, replied, Pure luck, sir. Just as it seemed like they were gaining the upper hand, a loud mechanical whir came from the ceiling. A massive security drone descended, its twin-mounted cannons locking onto them. Johnny groaned. Oh, fantastic. Ophelia, still furiously typing, shouted, Almost there. Keep it busy. Johnny turned to Bao. All right, new plan. You distract the drone while I figure out how to destroy it. Bao's eyes widened. Sir, why am I the distraction? Johnny gave him a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Because you have a much more distractible face. With that, Johnny grabbed a coil of thick wiring, looped it around the base of the drone, and yanked with all his strength. The drone spun wildly, its cannons misfiring into the ceiling, causing more electrical panels to explode. At that moment, Ophelia hit one final key. Done, she shouted. The ship lurched again, but this time, the screens displayed. Remote access disabled. Johnny smirked. And that's how you take back control. The victory was short-lived. A voice rang out through the intercom. You may have won this round, English, Volta sneered. But this game is far from over. Suddenly, the ship's self-destruct countdown activated. Johnny turned to Bao. Well, that's unfortunate. With less than 5 minutes before detonation, they had only one option left: escape. The deafening blare of the self-destruct alarm rang throughout the ship, its flashing red lights casting ominous glows across the control panels. The countdown had begun. 4 minutes and 52 seconds. That was all of the time Johnny, Bao, and Ophelia had to escape before the yacht was obliterated in a fireball of destruction. Johnny straightened his tie, wiping some sweat off his forehead. Well, that's rather dramatic, don't you think? Bao, frantically scanning the control room for options, turned to Ophelia. Can we deactivate it? Ophelia's fingers raced across the terminal, but a locked-out command prompt glared back at her. No, Volta's locked-out manual override. The only way to stop it would be from his remote server, and given our current situation, that's not an option. Johnny rubbed his chin. Right. So, in the absence of an off switch, I propose a time-honored alternative: running away very, very fast. The trio turned towards the corridor leading back to the upper deck, but before they could move, a group of armed security personnel appeared at the entrance, blocking their exit. The guards, still loyal to Volta, raised their rifles, their leader stepping forward with an arrogant smirk. You're not going anywhere. Johnny sighed. Bo, would you do the honors? Bao hesitated. Sir, I don't think talking will get us out of this one. Oh, I wasn't planning on talking. With a swift motion, Johnny grabbed a heavy fire extinguisher from the wall and hurled it at the guards. The metal canister slammed into one of them, knocking him over, while the sudden burst of white foam disoriented the others. Move! Ophelia shouted. The trio dashed through the now chaotic corridor, gunfire ringing behind them as the guards tried to regain control. Bao stumbled slightly but managed to keep pace. The ship's interior was rapidly heating up, and the constant shaking from minor detonations made running even harder. Johnny, never one to pass up a moment for dramatic flair, muttered, "This really isn't the ideal way to get one's daily cardio." They reached a narrow metal walkway, stretching over a large cargo bay where luxury cars and expensive equipment were secured in place. Below, massive flames had begun to spread, consuming parts of the engine room. Smoke billowed upwards, making it hard to breathe. "Sir, this bridge isn't stable," Bao warned. Johnny peered down at the metal flooring, noticing large cracks forming at the joints. "Well, I don't intend on staying to find out how much weight it can hold." They sprinted forward, but halfway across, one of the support cables snapped, causing the entire structure to tilt violently. Bao lost his footing, slipping towards the edge. "Bo!" Johnny lunged, grabbing his arm just before he fell into the inferno below. Bao dangled over the abyss, his grip slipping. "Sir, I'd rather not be flambéed today." Johnny grunted, pulling him up with effort. "Yes, well, I'd rather not explain to your wife why you turned into barbecue, so hang on." With one final pull, he hoisted Bao back onto the bridge, and the two scrambled forward. Another explosion rocked the ship, causing the remaining half of the walkway to collapse behind them. They barely made it to the other side before the entire structure plunged into the fire below. Ophelia, already ahead of them, had reached the main elevator leading to the top deck. She pressed the button repeatedly. "Hurry up, we don't have much time." The doors finally slid open, and they all rushed inside. The timer on the self-destruct sequence flashed, 2 minutes remaining. As the elevator shot upwards, Johnny checked his watch. "I must say this is cutting it a bit close, even by my standards." Bao, panting, nodded. "And that's saying something." Ophelia checked her pistol. "Once we reach the top deck, we need to find a way off the ship immediately." The elevator doors slid open to reveal the main deck, where lifeboats had already been launched. The few remaining crew members had fled, leaving only one escape option, a high-speed jet ski mounted near the edge of the ship. Johnny's eyes lit up. "Now that's more like it." A loud clang behind them signaled trouble. Turning around, they saw a final group of Volta's men, led by a particularly intimidating brute with a scar across his jawline. "You're not leaving," the man growled, cracking his knuckles. Johnny sighed. "You know, I was really hoping to avoid one last fight." The scarred man charged at Johnny. With seconds to spare, Johnny sidestepped at the last moment, causing the thug to slam headfirst into a metal pole. He stumbled backward, dazed, while Johnny delivered a swift kick to his midsection, sending him toppling overboard. Bao and Ophelia took care of the remaining guards, knocking them out efficiently. With the way finally clear, Johnny sprinted to the jet ski, quickly unfastening it from the restraints. All aboard the English Express. Bao hopped on, clinging tightly, while Ophelia secured the rear. Johnny revved the engine. "All right, hold on. This might get a little wet." As the self-destruct countdown hit 10 seconds, Johnny gunned the throttle, sending the jet ski rocketing off the deck. The trio plunged into the ocean below just as a massive explosion erupted behind them, engulfing the yacht in a fiery inferno. The shock wave sent a powerful wave crashing against them, nearly knocking them off the jet ski. Johnny steadied the handlebars, wiping seawater from his face. Well, that was exhilarating. Bao coughed, drenched. "Sir, Please remind me never to go on a yacht with you again." Ophelia smirked. "I'll admit, that was impressive." Johnny grinned. "Of course it was. I do this sort of thing all the time." Behind them, Volta's yacht had been completely reduced to debris, its flaming wreckage slowly sinking beneath the waves. A helicopter approached in the distance, its searchlight scanning the waters. A voice over the radio crackled, "Agent English, do you copy?" Johnny picked up the radio. "Yes, this is Johnny English reporting a very successful mission. Also, I'll be needing a dry martini and possibly a towel." The helicopter hovered lower, ready to extract them. But Johnny knew one thing for certain: his work wasn't over yet. Volta may have been defeated, but Johnny had a feeling the villain wasn't quite done with his schemes. And if that was the case, the world would always need a disaster-prone, ridiculously lucky, utterly unstoppable secret agent. And of course, that agent was none other than Johnny English. As the helicopter flew across the dark expanse of the ocean, Johnny English sat comfortably, his wet suit clinging uncomfortably to his skin. He shifted slightly, trying to find a dry patch, but to no avail. Opposite him, Bao wrung out his soaked tie, while Ophelia checked her sidearm, a slight smirk playing on her lips. Johnny cleared his throat. "Well, I must say, that was quite the successful mission." Bao glanced up, raising an eyebrow. "Sir? We nearly drowned," the yacht exploded, "and we barely escaped with our lives." Johnny nodded. "Exactly. A perfect execution." The Mi-7 pilot turned in his seat. "Sir, we'll be landing at headquarters shortly. The Prime Minister's expecting you." Johnny straightened his tie, at least what was left of it. "Ah yes, time to receive the hero's welcome." Ophelia chuckled. "I wouldn't be too sure about that. Volta's network may have been dismantled, but there's always a mess to clean up afterward." Johnny waved a hand dismissively. "Details. Details. The important thing is, we stopped a global cyber attack, eliminated a rather unsavory villain, and, most importantly, I looked rather good doing it." Bao gave him a skeptical look but said nothing. The helicopter touched down on the Mi-7 helipad, and Johnny stepped out with an air of confidence, shaking out his damp sleeves. Bao and Ophelia followed closely behind as they entered the sleek, modern headquarters. The moment Johnny entered the main briefing room, a hush fell over the agents gathered inside. All eyes turned toward him. For a moment he relished the attention, assuming it was admiration. But the look on Pegasus' face, Mi-7's stern director, told a different story. "English," Pegasus said, rubbing his temples as though he already had a headache. "You've caused another international incident." Johnny blinked. "What?" "I saved the world." Pegasus sighed and pressed a remote, bringing up a series of news reports on the screen. Headlines flashed. Johnny folded his arms. "Well, that's a bit dramatic." Pegasus gave him a hard stare. "The French government is demanding answers. The Prime Minister is furious. And Volta, whose body has not been recovered, is still considered a major security threat." Johnny hesitated. "So, we didn't quite wrap things up," Ophelia interjected. "It's likely Volta had an escape plan. The yacht's explosion would have been a distraction." Bao frowned. "Sir, if Volta's still out there..." Pegasus crossed his arms. "Then this mission isn't over." Johnny exhaled. "Well, that's inconvenient." Just as the tension in the room reached its peak, a loud buzzing sound filled the air. The main screen suddenly flickered, and a distorted image appeared, a masked figure, voice scrambled by digital distortion. "Hello, Miss 7, the figure said, his voice eerily calm. Pegasus stiffened. "Who is this?" The figure leaned forward and the image glitched before suddenly clearing. Jason Volta's face filled the screen, very much alive. Johnny's jaw tightened. "Oh, not this again." Volta smirked. "Miss me." Pegasus stepped forward. "Volta, you're a wanted man. You're finished." Volta chuckled. "Oh, I wouldn't say that. Did you really think blowing up my yacht would be enough to stop me? Please, I have resources beyond your comprehension." Johnny squinted. "What is it with villains and monologues?" Volta ignored him. "Consider this a warning, my seven. You may have disrupted my plans, but I'm far from done. In fact, I've already begun my next move." The screen suddenly changed, showing a live satellite feed of the London skyline. Volta's voice dropped to a whisper. "Watch closely." At that exact moment, a citywide blackout hit London. The lights flickered and died, leaving the skyline completely dark. Gasps filled the Mi-7 control room as agents scrambled to restore systems. Johnny clenched his fists. "Oh, he is really starting to annoy me." Volta's smirk widened. "Your move, English." With that, the screen cut to black. The room erupted into controlled chaos, Mi-7 agents scrambling to restore connections, Pegasus barking orders, and analysts frantically typing at their stations. Bao turned to Johnny. "Sir, this is bad." Johnny, surprisingly calm, adjusted his suit. "Oh, I'm well aware." Ophelia sighed. "Looks like we're going to have to take him down again." Pegasus turned to Johnny, his face grim. "English this time, don't mess it up." Johnny grinned confidently. "Pegasus, I always get the job done." Bao muttered, "Yes, but not without considerable collateral damage." Johnny ignored him. Pegasus exhaled. "Fine, but this time take extra precautions. We can't afford another disaster." Johnny saluted. "Absolutely, sir. No disasters at all." A beat of silence. Then, suddenly, boom. A loud explosion echoed through the Mi-7 facility. A moment later, sparks rained from a nearby control panel, smoke billowing from an overloaded server. Johnny coughed. "Right. Well, that one wasn't my fault." Pegasus closed his eyes in frustration. "Get out." Johnny turned to Bao and Ophelia, grinning from ear to ear. "Shall we?" Bao sighed, adjusting his glasses. "Here we go again." Ophelia smirked. "You better not slow me down." Johnny chuckled. "Oh, my dear, I am the very definition of speed and precision." Bao muttered under his breath. "That's definitely not true." With that, the three agents strode out of the control room, ready for their next adventure. As Johnny walked ahead, he couldn't help but think, maybe this time he'd actually get it right. But then again, what were the odds of that? When it comes to bumbling, well-intentioned spies who somehow manage to save the day despite their own incompetence, Johnny English Strikes Again delivers everything you'd expect, and then some. This third installment of the Johnny English franchise sees Rowan Atkinson return to the role of Britain's most accident-prone secret agent. And as always, he's an absolute joy to watch. The film kicks off with a hilarious premise. A massive cyber attack exposes every active British agent, leaving Mi-7 with no choice but to bring back retired spies. Enter Johnny English, now working as a school teacher, but still eager for action. With his ever-loyal sidekick Bao, Ben Miller, by his side, Johnny embarks on a globe-trotting mission filled with absurd gadgets, outlandish disguises, and plenty of classic Atkinson physical comedy. And that's a wrap on our review of Johnny English Strikes Again. What did you think of the movie? Did you love Rowan Atkinson's hilarious antics? Or do you think the series should have ended earlier? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you had a laugh. Subscribe for more awesome movie reviews. Share this with a friend who loves spy comedies.